Gacha games, the bane of many who play them. But what are gacha games? Well, I'm glad you asked and totally not confused on why you clicked this video. A gacha game is a game with a gambling or lottery mechanic that allows you to spend in-game currency to get units or items to use in the game. Sounds simple, right? Well, it is, until you realize everything in the game has a rarity, and that new unit you want is a 5-star, and the rates are abysmal. And now you dropped all your in-game currency into multi-summons, but still haven't gotten them. And just when despair is about to hit, the shop button begins to beckon you over. Looking for some more currency? Well, I've got some right here. All you gotta do is spend actual money and all of this could be yours for more summons. And now you spent some cash and still haven't gotten that SSR, and soon start to regret your life decisions. Sound familiar? But what if you didn't spend all of that currency on summons? What if, instead of pulling for characters and equipment, you used only what limited resources the game gave you? Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you a challenge none have ever seen before. Unless this has been done already, then I'm terribly sorry. But I give to you the free-to-play Extreme Challenge. The rules of the challenge are as followed. No gacha summoning. Pretty straightforward, and it's the only rule. There are exceptions to this rule, however. For instance, there are usually forced summons in the tutorial that cannot be skipped, so those summons are allowed, and what is summoned can be used. In most cases, the forced summon is either a set of units and items you get, or from a very limited list of things you can hope to get. And what you get isn't game-breaking or too overpowered, so it won't make the challenge any easier. Now, as for what game I will be doing this challenge in, as the title states, it will be Fate Grand Order. Also, as a sort of disclaimer, this isn't meant to be taken seriously. Think of this more as a review on a game with some research done to not sound like I've never played it before. And if anything I say somehow makes sense, take it like the uncooked rice in a salt shaker. Unexpected, but somehow works. Anyway, let's talk Fate Grand Order. Fate Grand Order, or FGO for short, is a gacha game set somewhere within the Fate universe, and was released on July 29th, 2015 in Japan, and June 25th, 2017 out here in the West. I know, 2-year gap, but hey, we got it in the West, and Wasengo is at least trying to give us some game mechanics earlier. Anyways, to summarize the story of FGO, you play as a surviving master on a mission to restore the world and stop the end of humanity, because someone decided to go back in time and write over it with a permanent marker. And how does the main character save the world? By going back in time with their trusty magic eraser to clean up the mistakes. And all of this takes place in the span of a year, which is wild when you think about it. Saving the world in the span of a year with no training? Well, story-wise, they don't train or show much training, but you do have your own type of training to do game-wise. But let's talk about said game's mechanics before that. To those that don't know a lick about FGO, allow me to give a simple rundown of some basics that the tutorial can explain better. Units, or servants in this case, have their own class, noble phantasm, skills, passive abilities, and a deck of 5 cards that consist of 3 types: arts, busters, and quick cards, each with a different effect. Busters do more damage, arts increase the servant's MP gauge, and quick cards generate critical stars. Noble phantasms, or NP for short, are basically an ultimate that every servant can use if their MP gauge is at 100. Class is more of a type like in Pokemon, where they're stronger or weaker to a certain class. Skills can be used in battle to give buffs or debuffs, and passive abilities give their own buffs naturally. There are also craft essences, or CEs, that a servant can equip for an extra buff. Combat is done by choosing a party of 6 servants and CEs to deploy, 3 in the front line and 3 in the reserves. Every turn, you get 5 cards at random from your servants to have to choose 3 to play, and skills if you want to. And if you play 3 of the same card type, or 3 of the single servant's cards, you will activate one of 4 chains: Buster, Arts, Quick, or Brave chains. Buster chains do more damage, Arts chains give a 20% MP gauge to whoever's art cards were used, Quick give 10 critical stars, and Brave chains give an extra attack. Did you get all that? No? Well, It's a good thing this is a video and you can go back to what you don't know. Anyways, remember what I said about having your own type of training? Well, that's because servants don't gain experience through combat. You have to give servants embers, or any spare servants, in order to level them up. And after they reach the level cap, you have to ascend them to reach even higher levels. All of which requires materials that you need to farm for. And boy howdy will you need to level up and ascend your servants, because this story scales and doesn't care if you were paying attention. But what servants will I have available to me for this challenge? Well, for starters, I have the starting unit and best girl Mash, who will be a good support when the time calls for it, and does neutral damage to every class. As mentioned before, I will be using the tutorial summon that the game gives to you. This summon has its own pool of units and craft essences that you have the chance to get with a guaranteed 4-star unit. Now, the list of 4-star units you can get is very limited, but still gives the player a good start. Thankfully, I got the one I was hoping for on the first try, Heracles. Heracles is a good starting servant for anyone starting out. First off, being a berserker allows him to have type advantage to every class, dealing more damage. The downfall to that is that every class also has type advantage against him, so they'll do more damage to him as well. But thankfully, he gets 2 skills that give him survivability, that let him tank through fights. So alongside Mash and Herc, I also have Gil de Reyes, Jing Qi, Charles Babbage, and best of all, Uriel, and also 6 craft essences that should be showed here. And with that, I think I'm set to complete the story of FGO with only 6 servants and 6 craft essences. But is that all I get to use in this challenge? In all gacha games, there are events, usually in the form of side quests, to celebrate a holiday or anniversary, and FGO is no exception to this. Thankfully, some of these events come with what the community has coined welfare servants, probably due to these servants being a 4-star unit the game gives to you when you finish the quest. Also craft essences that you can exchange for in the event shop, or get as drops. And don't let me forget the servants you can get for completing certain parts of the story. If you can't tell already by the craft essences or welfare units in my box, I've been preparing this video for a while, but am only now getting to it. But now armed with a few more servants and craft essences, I'm ready to push through this challenge. Wait, what's this? The 5-star servant exchange ticket? Well, I'm not going to say no to a free 5-star. Now, the only rule is no gacha summons. This is choosing a servant I want in exchange for the ticket, so this doesn't really count as a summon. Although, technically this would be, since I would be bringing this servant to my Chaldea, alongside all those welfare servants. But that's a question for another time. But which 5-star will I be taking? Well, I had to choose Waver. Being a support, not only giving a critical attack buff to one servant and an attack and defense buff to the entire party, he also gives a 50% MP gauge to one unit, and that's going to be a big game changer for me. FGO is already challenging as it is, and no gacha doesn't make things easier. Limiting what servants and CEs I have and can use will make even farming in this tough, but having Heracles will help even the odds, at least in the story. But he's still only one servant. You can only carry for so long until the scaling takes over, and by my guesstimations, the scaling will really start to kick in the later half of the story, somewhere around America. But even then, with the right craft essences and servants, this challenge isn't impossible. It will just be very close, and I will get very stressed when the enemy hits a crit at the worst time. And because I'm not the best at multitasking and have my main account and this one to juggle, I've spent more time on my main account. So I've only cleared up to Orleans and the events when they show up on the free account. I will eventually start pushing through more of the story, but for now, progress is slower than molasses. You might also want to consider that I'm talking about the NA version of FGO. The JP version just got a new Brave chain, the Might chain, which will be good if you get down to your last servant, and there's also the buff they gave to quick chains, so if you do it on JP, it might be a little easier. But should you attempt this challenge? Unless you want to challenge yourself even more in FGO, no, you should summon on whatever banners you want to. And even if your luck isn't on your side and you have more 4 to 5 star CEs than servants, you can still complete the story. Another aspect of many gacha games is that you can fuse your duplicates of units or equipment to make them stronger. The same applies to FGO. When servants are merged, their MPs get stronger, and CEs get an increase to the buff they give. They also give you free multi-summons on the friend point banner to give you some 1 to 3 star rarity servants and CEs. Also Lily Artoria and Angra Mainyu if you're lucky. But it does go without saying that you shouldn't sleep on the low rarity servants. That was my mindset when I first got into FGO, when it released out here in the West, and quickly led to me dropping it. But after maturing a little, I've come to appreciate how good they can be. There's a reason why I said Uriel was the best 3 star I got from the tutorial summon, and anyone that's gotten through Camelot knows exactly why. But regardless of whether you attempt this challenge or play FGO normally, one variable will always remain constant, and that is that you will always be farming materials and embers. Even when you think you're done farming materials, you won't be. Oh, and relying on supports, because why use a strategy when you can just throw a whale at it?